Swift economic growth and rapid industrialization have been putting Malaysia on the map during the last decade or two.
In March 2019, Malaysians were shocked with the news that more than 5,000 of people fell sick after being exposed to toxic fumes from Kim Kim River, Pasir Gudang, Johor. The victims, among them are school children.
And an abundance of toxic pollution as well. With over 32 million people, there are bound to be some waste management issues. The growth of the economy and population has posed a burden on the environment due to the greenhouse gas emissions, environmental degradation, and waste generation. Unfortunately, waste management has been a long-standing problem for Malaysia. Despite having regulations and established hazardous waste management policies, illegal dumping of this waste has occurred a number of times, with each dumping having a worse impact on the environment. According to the United Nations, Malaysia is the third largest generator of hazardous waste per year. Their manufacturing sector is the leading producer of toxic and hazardous waste. Pasir Gudang is a significant industrial and port city in Malaysia. Located in the southwestern part of Johor Bahru district in Johor, Malaysia, it was first established as a fishing village in 1918 and has since experienced a major boom in the residential and industrial sector. Unfortunately, the residents of Pasir Gudang are prone to environmental pollution because of this rapid development. The Kim Kim River, a 15-kilometer-long river, runs from the Masai sub-district and flows southward through Pasir Gudang into the Straits of Johor. The Kim Kim is considered to be one of the most polluted rivers in Johor Bahru, possibly even the entire world. Illegal and unauthorized waste dumps take place in many parts of Malaysia, not only on the sly, but out in the open as well. The Malaysian Nature Society has said that while good guidelines to control and regulate chemical waste are already in place, they're difficult for the authorities to enforce. That's why, during the early morning hours on March 6, 2019, over 40 tons of toxic chemical waste from an illegal tire recycling company was dumped straight into the Kim Kim River from a bridge in Pasir Gudang. The toxic concoction consisted of benzene, acrylonitrile, and acrolein, to name just a few. By sunrise that day, residents all along the river were already complaining of nausea and shortness of breath. By the morning of the following day of March 7th, more than 30 people had been admitted to hospitals with severe symptoms of vomiting, fainting after breathing in a strong smell from the river. These complaints came from residents about 500 meters from the area where the chemicals were initially offloaded. 2 schools situated within half a kilometer of the dump site were quickly closed. An emergency meeting was held on March 8, 2019. It cited the government as the responsible party for covering the cost of appointing contractors to safely clean up the waste. They appointed 3 contractors to clean up the 1.5-kilometer stretch of affected river. The cleaning contractors who were appointed to the job, though, had no experience in dealing with hazardous chemical waste and worsened the situation. 5 police reports in relation to the chemical dumping were lodged on the 9th. On the 11th, a second wave of toxic pollution hit. Another 106 people fell ill from the fumes, with 29 of those being sent to health clinics for examination. 77 were sent to Johor's Sultan Ismail Hospital for admittance. By March 12, 2019, 13 schools within a 3-kilometer radius were ordered to emergency shutdown. The very next day, a total of 111 more schools were ordered to close indefinitely. By the 14th of March, in a span of only 1 week from the first reports of hospitalizations, the number of victims had risen to nearly 1,000. The South Korean chemical company, Watt Chemical Titan BHD, stepped in to provide assistance with the cleanup. Malaysia's Fire and Rescue Department hazmat team was also deployed to Johor. There, they collected 20 air, water, and soil samples for real-time analysis. 9 chemicals were found in the samples taken from the site. In addition to the previously mentioned substances, they found high levels of hydrogen chloride, methane, toluene, xylene, ethylbenzene, and D-limonene. The hazmat team claimed that the chemicals had not been properly cleaned up and had simply been left behind by the previous team. People were rapidly being exposed and getting sick from the inhalation of fumes from the chemical waste. The Sultan of Johor pledged millions in aid, quoted as saying, "As a result of this irresponsible act, hundreds of people, including students and young pupils, had to be rushed to hospitals. These are my people, and I will not let this continue. I'm urging all governmental authorities to quickly detain and penalize the offenders." Soon after this statement, 2 more dumping sites were discovered, near Sungai Semilang and Sungai Masai, in Taman Tanjung Puteri Resort just a few days later. These sites contained a total of 15 blue barrels of chemical waste. By March 16th, 1.3 kilometers of the polluted sections of the river had finally been cleaned up. A combined 900 tons of soil and 1,500 tons of polluted water were removed from the river. 2 years later, nearing the second anniversary of the 2019 chemical dump, a third wave of polluted air and water occurred. A recent check had shown that the river, which had started to finally become clearer and cleaner, had become murky with oily spots flowing upstream. Kampung Bukit Palai village head Zulkifli Qasim said that the villagers had first noticed the latest pollution a month previously, 4 months after the Drainage and Irrigation Department had conducted maintenance work on the river. Residents were worried because the wildlife that had begun to return was suddenly disappearing, and fishermen were also complaining that all the fish had vanished. The hazardous materials left behind in the shoddy cleanup in 2019 had been exposed to wind and rain and other environmental elements over the past 2 years. Due to erosion and other factors, the uncontrolled airborne substances then spread and affected the residents of the river once again. Villagers along the Kim Kim were urged to file formal complaints. These would enable the department to gather data, including the approximate location of the alleged pollution. The DOE had special data systems that could provide fast information regarding the source of pollution, as well as drones to monitor the pollution sites. They also had the expertise to identify pollution and the ability to ascertain whether the chemical or pollutant was truly dangerous. Following this investigation, Malaysian Fire and Rescue Department Director General Mohammed Hamdan Wahid explained that the further spread of toxic fumes could have been prevented if the illegally dumped chemicals found years earlier had been completely removed the first time. He went on to state that the authorities initially did not dispose of the excess chemicals appropriately after concluding that they were no longer reactive. This was allegedly due to the costs involved. During this third wave of pollution, agencies were dispatched yet again to clean up the polluted sections of the river. They collected 2.43 tons of chemical waste the first day of the newly reported incident. Ironically, just as before, the cleaning works worsened the chemical reaction. The contractor was not experienced in dealing with this type of waste in this situation either. Because of this, a few days later, the CBRN, Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Team from the 12th Squadron of the Royal Army Engineers Regiment was sent in to assist the hazmat team in the chemical cleanup efforts. The illegally dumped chemicals that began this whole debacle were found to be some type of marine oil that emanated flammable methane and benzene fumes. The leaders of Johor and Malaysia's environmental minister had assumed the situation was under control and that there was no need to declare a state of emergency in the area. The Crown Prince of Johor, Tunku Ismail Idris, expressed his opinion over Twitter. He said that the government should have declared a state of emergency at the onset of the incident and relocated residents until the area was deemed safe. Former Prime Minister called out the state's slow response and refusal of the Pakatan Harapan government to allocate more funds to clear the affected river space. The actions were perceived as the government prioritizing money rather than the health and lives of its people. A group of over 160 of the toxic waste dumping victims have an ongoing lawsuit against the state government in hopes of being awarded monetary compensation. 1 Singaporean and 2 Malaysians are facing multiple charges. If found guilty, they would have to pay exorbitant fines and serve a minimum of 5 years in prison. However, after the charges had initially been slapped on the men, the Johor High Court lessened the charges. He reduced the bail amount for the 2 Malaysians and offered the Singaporean bail that was not offered initially. It's uncertain whether the accused will be able to satisfy the fines imposed in the event of their conviction. It's also uncertain whether it's an adequate deterrent to relevant individuals and companies who will continue to commit these environmental crimes. It may, if necessary in the future, be more important to cut the source of the problem at its roots, i.e. the companies that facilitate illegal dumping, rather than just punishing individuals tasked with the job of said dumping. The Environmental Department conducting the investigation stated that if the chemical is similar to that found earlier that had sickened so many in 2019, the factories producing the chemical waste will be shut down indefinitely. 265 factories were under investigation, with a total of 30 being shortlisted for a more in-depth investigation. There was a call for the state government to implement an integrated control and enforcement action against all factories that use hazardous materials. Malaysia's health ministry formed a medical team on June 1st of 2020. This consisted of officers from the Institute for Medical Research and Johor Health Department, which were to examine a total of 6,000 victims affected by the chemical pollution incident. Some of the children developed nerve problems from chemical poisoning and are still unable to walk properly to this day. Neurologists have said that they have to be monitored for at least the next 3 years. Due to the many repeated incidents of pollution and the uncertainty of continuing health effects, many families have moved away from the area. Scientific evidence has shown that other pollution incidents have been documented as well, and are a repeated occurrence in the Straits of Johor and Johor's rivers. In 2004, metal hydroxide sludge from Taiwan was illegally imported at Simpang Renggam, Johor. And then a similar occurrence to that of the waste dumping in 2019 happened in Segamat, Johor. It caused the evacuation of some 300 villagers before more than 300 tons of toxic waste was buried at an illegal dump site, causing the emission of ammonia fumes. The impacts of these various incidences vary depending on the scale, source, and characteristics of the waste involved. The cleanup in the aftermath of the toxic dump was carried out at significant cost to the Malaysian authorities. The health implications for the communities in Pasir Gudang affected by the incident will most likely have lifelong consequences. There appears to be a necessity for the government to review and update the existing legislation in order to ensure that it will continue to provide an avenue for protection for the environment. Although Malaysia has since enacted various new laws to protect the environment, incidents like the 2019 chemical dump continue to occur on Sungai Semilang River. Pollution like this over the years has not only affected public health, but also impacted the rich river biodiversity of the Johor Strait. It's completely disrupted the ecosystem of the Sungai Semilang River for the foreseeable future. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. This is a new project I'm trying where I cover dark events in history, disasters, things like that. Mostly I'm going to try to cover stuff that I think not a lot of people have heard before because I think it needs to be talked about more. And I'll try to do my best to cover it with as much information as I am able to find myself. I also like to include the aftermath of what happened and if anything changed as a result. If you guys appreciated the content in this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, but only if you feel so inclined. I'd like to give a special thanks to Toxic Queen, who assisted in writing this script with me after I compiled all the research and evidence together. I would also like to give a special thanks to my video editor. You will find a link to his social media in the description below. You will also find a link to my social media, in case you want me to cover any particular event that's happened in history that you don't think a lot of people talk about normally. I'll try to give it a shot and do my best to do it justice. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, it will be listed in the description. I will also list all of my sources, so if you would like to read onward on your own and discover more about the event, that will be available to you. If you guys like other kinds of dark, horror, scary content kind of stuff, I also have a channel called Blue Spooky where I read true scary stories and do documentary videos on mysteries and things like that. And then I also have a true crime channel called Mr. Blue Skies, which you can check out if you'd like that kind of thing as well. I think that's all for now though, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great and safe day.